I'm going to read from my novel, Terry Fox, Somewhere the Hurting Must Stop. And for those of you who know Terry Fox, I'm sure the story is very familiar, but for those who don't know Terry Fox, there's a summary on the back of the novel, which I'll read. A one-legged boy, Terry Fox, sets himself the task of running a marathon a day across the length of Canada, the second largest country in the world, in aid of cancer research because the children are crying with pain in the cancer wards, and somewhere the hurting must stop. Now, that's a nice short summary of the Terry Fox story, but I have a longer summary which I'd like to read as well because it gives more details. This summary is from my journal, a journal which I wrote about the writing of the novel and the Terry Fox story, and I'll tell you later in the video how you can access that journal for free. Here it is. Terry Fox was a young Canadian who was leading what seemed to be a normal life for one of his age, when, at age 18, he was stricken with cancer. His right leg was amputated in an attempt to prevent the spread of the cancer to the rest of his body, and he searched for ways to continue his life in as normal a way as possible. At a certain point, he decided that he would run across Canada on one good leg and one artificial leg in order to raise awareness of the need for cancer research. Canada stretches from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean and through many kinds of terrain and weather, and his run generated an empathetic response from the Canadian community. The publicity which his run generated raised much money for cancer research, and it became an example of heroic dedication and a selfless cause. He ran a marathon a day for 143 days until the cancer, which had spread to the rest of his body, stopped his run about halfway across the country. Excuse me. And he died shortly after. His story appeals to the imagination as one of courage, self-sacrifice, and hope as a response to the worst that life has to offer, and has been an inspiration to millions, not only in Canada, but around the world. Every year across the world, there are thousands of runs which are dedicated to promoting cancer awareness and raising research funds, and which are organized in the name of Terry Fox. So that's a summary of the story. Now, the story in detail, well, it took me 50,000 words to write a novel on that story. And I just want to give you the flavor today. So what I'm concentrating on today is, excuse me, I have a frog in my throat today. What I want to concentrate today on is the run. And so we'll call this video The Run. Now, the structure of the novel is quite simple. It's in three sections. The first 5 chapters, chapters 1 to 5, are Terry Fox running through the eastern provinces, the 5 eastern provinces, because he started in St. John's, Newfoundland. The next 5, chapters 6 to 10, are Terry Fox running through southern Ontario. And the last 5, there are 15 chapters, chapters 11 to 15, are Terry Fox running through northern Ontario. The chapters too are structured, and they're structured in levels of thought. And the level I'm going to read today is Terry Fox consciously thinking about the run, the physical run. But if you think of it this way, and that's the way I think of it when I structure my novels and write them, if you think of a cliff face and you think of yourself as a geologist, you can look up and down that cliff face and see different levels, elements that have been deposited over the years. And on one layer, there might be ash from a volcano, which happened one year, another layer of sand, another layer of soil, and so on. So you can move up and down that cliff face and see bits of various elements in that cliff face. But you can also look along the cliff. You can follow the ash layer along the cliff and find more things in the ash. Or you could take the sand layer and move along the cliff and find more things in the sand, or the soil layer. So the chapter is all of the elements in bits. Terry Fox thinking of different things in his life. I'll mention some of those in a moment. The novel is moving along the chapters and seeing all these bits evolve as separate stories. So, what are some of these elements in the mind of Terry Fox as he's running? Well, first of all, the run itself, which is what I'm going to concentrate on today. And that's what he concentrated on: the physical run, the distance, the time, and so on. That I'll read from today. Parts I won't read, well, publicity. Embedded in these layers in the chapters and the layers of Terry Fox's mind are publicity. How is it going? Is it getting enough publicity? Is it working well? Why the publicity? Well, fundraising, another layer. His main objective in running across Canada was to get publicity to raise funds for cancer research. So, how well is the fundraising going is in his mind at every moment, and therefore in every chapter in this novel. The weather, the terrain, and so on, very difficult, not easy to run across Canada. You're meeting different weather, different terrain. Time is going by. If you're in southern Ontario in the summer, is that the best weather to run in? Northern Ontario in the fall, fine. What about the prairies still to come? The Rocky Mountains. Isn't winter coming on if it's fall? Something to think about all through the early parts of the run. And lastly, health, He was so determined, Terry Fox, but he was a physical human being. He's become a myth, he's become a legend, he's become a folk tale, but he was a human being with a mechanical, physical body. So how well was the health holding up? That's a layer in his mind as well. Why do I write the novel this way? Well, that's how we think. We think in layers. We may be driving our car, perhaps on the way to the dentist, so we're thinking about that consciously. We're thinking about stop signs and so on. Thinking about the dentist, well, is this going to be expensive? Then we start thinking about our finances. Is this going to take away from the grocery money? Maybe we think of the future. Oh, I'll go ask the boss for a raise. Then we imagine what he might say, what we might say. All these layers are going on at the same time while we're really concentrating on driving the car. And Terry Fox then is concentrating on the run, but thinking of all these things. Cancer in his mind at various times, family, his support, the rock on which he's standing, many other things. Canada, if you're running across Canada, you're certainly thinking of Canada and what it means to you. So all of these layers are in the chapters, but I'm not going to read from them today, but I'm just giving you a sense of what you'll find if you actually read the novel. So just a flavor of the run, and not all of the elements about the run will I read today. So if we turn to chapter 1, he starts in St. John's, Newfoundland, and I'll read like 3. Every chapter has 8 elements, 8 segments of the run, but I won't read them all. So from the first chapter, I'll read 3 of them. And here we go. Dipping my leg in the Atlantic Ocean, seagulls circling overhead, muddy water, choppy currents, windy weather. April in St. John's, Newfoundland. Now he also has as a layer in his mind an image, an objective image, seeing himself from a distance. And if you look at the picture on the cover, what do you see? A boy with a missing leg. And if you drove by him as he was running, you might say to yourself, oh, a boy with a missing leg. That's a view from Terry Fox almost from outside, but it's in his mind as he runs. This is where it all begins. So the thoughts as he's getting ready to run. Next time I dip my leg in the ocean, I'll be back home. Atlantic to Pacific and every inch of road in between. The water's cold and muddy, some construction going on. One of the water jugs floats away. I want 2 jugs of seawater, but I'm only going to get 1. Weather report last night. A lot of bitter weather ahead. Did my training in BC, so I'll be all right. Nice to have the cameras here. Newspaper people, too. Excuse me again. Hope everybody sees this. Got to make sure everybody knows. Did a lot of phoning last night. Some of the towns seem very interested. Oh, some of them don't seem to care. Wanted to start early this morning, but had to time this for maximum news. Reminding Doug to pass the bucket through the crowd. We're here for more than just photographs. Now it's off to a reception at City Hall. So elements like Doug and so on are dealt with more fully in the rest of the novel, but not necessarily in the passages I'm reading. The second one on page 2, the second running section. Running between St. John's and Portugal Cove. Tougher weather than I thought, blowing snow and biting wind. It's April, but it feels like winter here. An objective image in his mind, a figure running along a windswept road. Something that a person would see if they didn't know who he was and were driving by in a car. Running along and thinking, putting on the miles. I put everything in my life on hold. I left everything behind to go on this run. My parents, my brothers and sister, just Doug, and that's all I brought from my life in BC. I'm not going to think about my life while I'm on the run. Not about school, not about a job, not about my future, not about Rika. Just the run, the publicity and the fundraising, and that's all. I'll be thinking of cancer, nothing but cancer. Cancer can be beaten. Cancer can be beaten. Cancer can be beaten. That's all I'm going to think about while I'm running. That's all I'm going to talk about when I talk. I'll be living in the present, not the past. I left everything behind when I left BC. Whatever future I have can start when I get back. And then, leaving out some of these other elements today, we go to the next section, which is page 3, the next section of running. Running between Clarenville and Port Blandford, standing beside the van, cold wind whipping along the highway, shivering in the cold. Well, he wore his shorts in order to show what cancer does. He could have put on long pants and been warmer, but no, he wanted people to realize what cancer does to people, and that would motivate him to give money for cancer research. So that's why he's shivering. An objective image, a runner whose breath makes a cloud in the biting wind. More thoughts. Why can't he find a sock? All I need is one sock. I've got to talk to Doug. It's not enough just to drive the van. He should be setting aside some socks the night before. That's all he has to do. Why is that so hard? He was joking around in the laundry room, but he wasn't doing his job. Easy for him to search for a sock in the van with the heater going full blast, while I stand out on the highway dripping with sweat in the bone-chilling wind and wait for a sock. I knew I should have brought Daryl. Too bad he had to stay for exams. This wind is getting colder. It's whipping right along. I'm going to get pneumonia and have to give up the run. And all because Doug can't find a bloody sock. Well, again, more about Doug and Daryl and other elements of the novel, but not today. And as I said, there's more about the run in chapter 1, but again, I'm just giving you the flavor. So let's go to chapter 2, and I'll just read one of the 8 sections of the run of chapter 2. As I mentioned, every chapter of the first 5 is Terry Fox running through another province. Great to be in Nova Scotia. This is chapter 2, page 11. Between Sydney Mines and Big Broad Door. 4:30 a.m. Silence in the van. No music. No one speaks. Poking along in the dark. The image, 2 faces in the glow of dashboard lights. The thought, Doug looking for a pile of stones that he made to mark the last run. Moonlight, rows of fences, cattle in the fields. Why doesn't Doug figure out a better method of finding yesterday's spot? Never mind. Gotta keep myself from exploding. Just let it all flow over me. Always better to run in the mornings. Like to put on as many miles as I can in the dark. Get the bulk of the running done before it's noon. Never know what it's going to be like in the afternoon. So some problems there that are dealt with in other parts of this chapter and in other parts of the novel as well. Here's the first of 8 in chapter 3. Terry Fox concentrating on the run. Chapter 3, page 21. Running. Good to be here in Prince Edward Island. The image? A young man talking earnestly in a phone booth. He used to phone ahead and ask local newspapers and television to give him some space. And they did, but it was minimal publicity at the beginning. It changed later on. The thought? Staying in motels and camping in church parking lots or along the roadside in the country. Phoning from payphones for a little publicity. Maybe an article in a local newspaper, at least a mention on local TV. Some of them think it's just a hoax or not really newsworthy. Running for cancer doesn't seem to some people to be news. One reporter told me that her editor said that one mention is enough. A few more miles and a few more dollars isn't a big enough story to print. He told her it won't be news again until I stop. And again, leaving the rest of that chapter and moving on. Much more in that chapter on the run, much more in that chapter on all the other topics. But here's chapter 4, the first item, page 31. Running across New Brunswick between Sackville and Memramcook, hills of snow, walls of wind, troubles with the van. So it was a very real and very gritty run. Terry Fox, I emphasize the folk tale aspects, the legendary aspects, the mythical aspects, but it's a very gritty run by a very real man, 21 years old, across the very real terrain, Canada. An image, a boy hugging his parents in a motel room. I always break down on the phone. Every time I talk to my parents, I start to cry. Nobody told me they'd be coming. They could tell by the look on my face that I was surprised. So great relief there. Very lonely at the beginning. And again, minimal response only because people didn't know about Terry Fox. People in Eastern Canada were very responsive after they got to know about him. But there was nothing official about his run at first. And it didn't generate the publicity that it later did. And it generated publicity all over Canada. And they were all very generous. But very difficult to be grinding away every day and not getting the results because it was the kids in the cancer wards that he was running for, not himself. Page 41, chapter 5, the last chapter in the first third of the novel. Running in Quebec, my 5th province out of 10, running along beside the St. Lawrence River. A man tossing a ball to children across a fence. Just something he would see as he runs along. But then an older person helping younger people. That's an image of the whole run, really. Thoughts? Can't believe the power of the water. Can't believe the power of the wind. Feel a tremendous sense of a barrier. People here should know more English. I should know more French. Phoning up a local newspaper and having someone answer in French is just a dead end. I can't give them an interview and they can't ask me questions. But cancer is always cancer. It knows everybody's name. Everybody in the world could lose a leg. Got to figure out how to communicate. The towns in Quebec are very beautiful. Every village has a church with a glistening steeple. Kids are playing outside at recess, but I can't tell them about my leg. Should be better in Quebec City and Montreal. Well, it was, but only because more people there spoke English. But the idea of communicating something to others, to the rest of the world, is the larger image there. Sure, Quebecers should know more English and non-Quebecers should know more French. We should all be able to communicate better all over the world, and that's one of the elements of this story, a communication of important things, I guess, to other people. And that's chapter 5, and that's the last chapter in the first section of this novel. And now we move into the second of 3 sections in the novel, chapters 6 to 10, and this is the run in Southern Ontario. So big changes in Southern Ontario. Some of them are indicated in these passages I'm going to read, and others are dealt with in other layers of the novel, which are, of course, layers in the mind of Terry Fox as he's running. Chapter 6, page 51. Hawkesbury at the bridge, crossing the Ottawa River into Ontario, the high school band thumping away, balloons released and drifting up over the trees. An image? 2 boys collecting money from a crowd. The thought? The local community center, shaking everybody's hand. 3 cheers from a pretty big crowd. The announcer calls it a walk and then calls it a run. It's the first thing I always correct, but I don't need to now. People have driven here from all over, wanting to donate and shake my hand. A feeling that things are going to be just great from now on. Well, he always insisted that it was a run, and it was a run. He was running, he wasn't walking. And when people made that mistake, he corrected them. The second one I'll read in that same chapter, chapter 6, is on page 52. Running between L'Original and Alfred, the Cancer Society of Ontario is going full out. So he started to get more help from people who realized he was genuine, including the Cancer Society. And that led to more publicity and therefore more donations. And he hoped, of course, when he started out, for $1 from every Canadian, which I didn't really look it up. It was probably a cost of a cup of coffee at the time, and there were surprisingly 24 million Canadians. I say that only because it seems like a small number compared to now where there might be, I don't know, 40 million Canadians or so. This is 2020 as I'm reading, and this was 1980 as he was running, but $1 Canadian. And it started to happen when he got the publicity. An image, snowflakes drifting down on an empty street. At first he was running down empty streets. Now in southern Ontario with the publicity, streets are filled with people waiting to see Terry Fox. Thanking Bill for what he did. It was Bill who convinced them that they should take me on. What a difference it's going to be. It's going to be better here in Ontario. You can be running down a road, flakes of snow and biting wind, and no one knows it. You know, the next town is going to have an empty main street. Then you run down the same kind of road and everyone sees you on national TV. There's 1,000 people waiting on the sidewalk when you run through their town. Makes the run a whole lot easier. Still the dizziness and the blood on the shorts and the breakdowns with the springs in the leg. But it sure makes all of the pain seem a lot more worthwhile. So again, elements turning up in that passage that are dealt with more fully elsewhere. A third one in this chapter, the first of the second section. Ottawa is beautiful. Enjoying the Sparks Street Mall, cafes and shops and restaurants, stopping and chatting and saying hello. Shoppers enjoying the sunshine, having a cool drink in the shade. An image? Holiday crowds posing for pictures with a curly-haired boy. And if someone saw a photograph of a curly-haired boy with a crowd, that's what they think. And of course, you and I know, well, it's Terry Fox. The thought? Slowing the pace right down to a walk. What a beautiful sunny day. Hundreds of people out for the sunshine and the stroll. The crowds have been good since Hawkesbury. Everybody seems to know. The problem has always been to get out the word. Trying to tell them about the reason. Not enough to just wave at the crowds. Hope the media keeps telling the story. Don't want it to be a celebrity game. It's nice that people want to see me. Hope they also want to give. Nice to have such a group of runners. Want to show them how I can move. Soon be out on the streets and running. Nice to stroll along the mall, but nicer to run. So some elements there that are dealt with more fully as well. He didn't want to be famous for himself. He didn't want to be a star. He wanted to raise money. So the publicity, he felt, had to remain focused on the purpose, which is to raise money for cancer research. So great to be known, you know, and people show up to see him, but he still wanted them to realize why he was doing this. Please give money to cancer research because their children are in pain in the cancer wards. And now chapter 7, I'll just read one. Running between Bowmanville and Oshawa, Toronto straight ahead, population, media, finance. Ontario is the center of it all. A crowd of people behind a barricade, waving and smiling. Excuse me again. The whole meaning behind the run is coming alive. The newspapers, the television networks, the branches of the Cancer Society, the local politicians, and even the Prime Minister and Governor General of Canada. Everybody's getting behind the run for cancer. People are coming out of their houses and standing on the roads and streets to cheer and wave as I run by. The provincial police are providing an escort and collecting money in their hats. There's a baseball game and some rallies at city halls in the towns ahead. Whole schools of kids are lining all the routes. It's a long way from running in the dark at 5 o'clock. So just one item there I'll mention. The Prime Minister and the Governor General of Canada, he met them in 1980. And their names are not mentioned in this novel. I think all literature works on a continuum between folktale at one end of that polarity and detail at the other end. And so I have both in this novel, but I think the only people who have both names, first and last, are the Fox family in this novel, and I did that deliberately. Bill and Doug have only first names. You can look them up, but they're not in the novel. It's at the folktale level, and I deal with them. And when Terry Fox thinks of them, since every word in the novel is his thoughts, the Prime Minister and the Governor General at the folktale level, you can look them up. Who were they in 1980? You won't find their names in this novel, and that's deliberate. Chapter 8, the first one, page 71. Running through the streets of central Ontario, thousands of people lining the sidewalk, waving and singing and cheering as I run by. The image, a boy in shorts and t-shirts standing on a stage. A rally with hundreds of people. The amount of money keeps going up and up. $200 when I arrived here, standing and listening to the speeches. How the people of Oakville are privileged to have me come here. The numbers on the board changing and changing as the speakers talk. $8,600 and moving up. Hundreds of people sharing applause. Invited to the microphone to give my talk. Well, I put some numbers in, but I generally stayed away from them. This is like 40 years later as I'm reading this, and the numbers change over the years. And so I put numbers in, but I didn't sort of give you totals, say. And that was in my research. Another thing was miles versus kilometers or kilometers. Canada Day versus Dominion Day. You know, things change between 1980 and when I wrote the novel, and of course now when I'm reading it. So I made decisions as I wrote the novel. Chapter 9, the fourth in the middle section of the chapters. Running down the main street of Etonia, plenty of fundraising, but very little running. Children smiling for the camera in a cancer ward. So this is obviously an image as a memory in his mind. Here's why I'm running, the children in the cancer ward. The thought, caught in a whirlpool in southern Ontario. Take the van to a city, run down the main street, meet the mayor and speak at a rally, run through another city the next day, and do it again. So, as wonderful as it was in southern Ontario to get all this Canada-wide publicity, bigger crowds, more money coming in for cancer research, the problem was that it started to take his time and his energy. Terry Fox he wanted to show up at these rallies. He would go to a town, do a little bit of running for the cameras, then go and speak at the arena, the baseball field, town hall, town square, and that was a wonderful thing, but it kind of cut down on the time and the energy for the running. So what was great about Southern Ontario was also a bit of a problem, and he had to balance it out. All of life is about balance, right? And this novel is about that too. Chapter 10, the last chapter in the middle section, Southern Ontario, page 91. Lying on a bed in a hotel room in Toronto, TV on and dinner on a tray, my artificial leg on a cushy chair. A young man with his eyes tightly closed is the image. The thought? I've been running all over Southern Ontario, Hamilton, Brantford, Paris, London. I've been running down every main street, giving speeches at city halls, attending receptions in every legion and every arena. But these short runs are just for show. They don't add up to many miles. I'm supposed to be running a marathon a day. I could have lit out north from Toronto when I came here the first time. The miles aren't going to run themselves. A lot of highway from here to BC. Winter's going to come on soon, and I might get caught. So the image of lying on a bed in a hotel room, like when people pressure him quite benevolently to stop the run and heal the stump, which is getting raw, and giving him problems. And he says, no, I don't want to hear that. He says, look, I could have been lying on my bed at home in BC if I'd never started the run. And I don't want to do that here. I'm here to run. So this image of the necessity of lying on a bed between, say, two fundraising sessions in Toronto is kind of an ironic image. It's necessary to raise the funds to fight cancer. It's a drawback in terms of just wanting to get out and run. So that really is the last section I will read. So there's 7 more in chapter 10, and that finishes the Southern Ontario section of the novel. And now the third section of the novel, as I said before, is from chapter 11 to chapter 15, and that's Terry Fox running through Northern Ontario. So here's the 3 sections I'm going to read from that first chapter, chapter 11, page 101. Running between Aurelia and Severn Bridge, a stride, 2 hops, and a stride, running my way out of Southern Ontario. The image, a small figure running alone among tall pines. The thought? Running free in Northern Ontario, rocks and trees and waterfalls, miles and miles of highway, and only little towns along the way. Small groups come out to meet me when I run along their main streets. Everybody wants to help as much as they can. It'll be a long way across the north shore of Lake Superior. That's what everybody tells me, but I can make it. Nothing's going to stop me now, not the distance, the blood, or the pain. I'll run through pain and out the other side. A second one from that same chapter, page 102. A parking lot outside a restaurant, Gravenhurst. Doug and Darrell carrying a cake. bill with a bunch of presents. A group of young guys goofing around in a parking lot, you'd think if you didn't know who they were. The memory, or the thought, my 22nd birthday. Tried not to think of it out on the road. Life is passing by so quickly. I want to achieve some kind of accomplishment. I want to reach a meaningful milestone. My sense of urgency is getting stronger every day. But hey, there's no way I'm going to make an emotional speech. I know these guys too well to let my guard down. A couple of reporters ready to snap a picture, a photograph for all the newspapers and the TV. The Cancer Society probably won't like it. The war amps won't like it either. But hey, I'm 22. I need a break from all this thinking, and this'll do. I wait till they're close, and then I make my move. Well, what did he do with the cake? It's in the rest of the novel, but I won't read it today. But the goofing around was necessary, and he concentrated so ferociously, maybe you could say, but he concentrated on the run. Everything had to be right, and he had a serious purpose in doing it. But he also needed to goof around a little bit and let off steam. And fiddling with the birthday cake as it was given to him was part of the letting off steam. 103, running between Burke's Falls and Sundridge. An image, a group of young friends sharing a drink by the side of the road. Again, if you and I were driving by and didn't know who they were. The thought, moving briskly along the highway, running as smoothly as a machine, both legs pumping like pistons, heart pumping smoothly, hip and ankle free of soreness, health as good as it needs to be. Doug and Daryl in the van, water ready at every mile, crowds of well-wishers and donors waiting ahead. Publicity in local papers and on TV, putting the miles on my personal odometer. Thoughts of cancer fading away. My mind is clear as a mirror, thinking of nothing but my own thoughts. Perfect weather, perfect scenery, perfect day. So that's the third of 8 passages in that chapter, chapter 11. But we'll move on to chapter 12. The first item, page 111. Running in northern Ontario. Nothing of me and the rocks and the trees. I don't allow myself to think about Rika. She'll be there when I get back to BC. 2 young people dressed up for a high school dance. Well, that's an image that is obviously a memory as he's running. You have to keep your distance from people, like the media people, and the doctors, and the war amps representatives. Now they're asking why don't I give it up and just do the cancer promotion from now on. You've done your best, Terry. You've made your point and there's nothing left to prove. You're only going to damage your health if you keep on running. I love the people who cheer me on, and I like to talk with them when I can. But that little girl who cried, when she saw the blood on my shorts, didn't realize that there's something at stake here that's bigger than a few drops of blood. I'll only stop this run if the run stops me. So there's no real antagonist in this novel. All these classical how to write a novel books tell you have to have a protagonist and an antagonist, a villain even. But there are good people of goodwill who want Terry to either stop the run or postpone the run to heal up his leg. They mean well, but he doesn't really want to hear that, and he's not going to do it. As for the little girl crying when she saw the blood, this is a typical photograph of Terry and was chosen deliberately. He insisted on wearing the shorts, even when he met the Prime Minister, even when he met the Governor General. This is what cancer does. The missing leg is a fact that you have to deal with. I was going to say the missing leg is real, but that's an odd way to say it. But he did lose a leg, and it is real blood on the shorts. That's what cancer does. So he wanted people to take cancer seriously and donate money, which was the only way to reduce the threat of cancer and hopefully someday eliminate it. Chapter 13, running from Daybrad to Echo Bay. People cheering me as I run. A dizzy spell, but I keep on running. A shake or two to clear my head. So the health is deteriorating as he runs in northern Ontario, and he's aware of it. But he's overcoming it, eh? He's not letting it slow him down. Well, it is slowing him down, but he's not letting it stop him, and he's not taking advice that says, for your health, postpone or stop the run. An image, a one-legged runner posing for pictures with a group of kids. Nice to be in the routine, 26 miles every day. Lots of water, lots of rock, lots of trees. Small crowds along the way. Stop and talk for a moment or two. but I don't want to lose my pace. The guys from the van collect with their buckets, always grateful for every cent. Some people tell me I should smile more, but I'm not doing this for fun. Hope the crowds know I'm glad to be here, even though there's a scowl on my face. Together we can lick this thing. That's the one thing I know for sure. It's when we don't all pull together that things go wrong. And so there was a scowl on his face, eh? He looked rather grim when running, but it was hard work, eh? And it was serious. Um, and now, chapter 14, the second last chapter in the novel, page 131. Running from Hemlow to Pringle. I know I'm slowing down. I have to take more breaks than I used to do. A tiny figure moving slowly beside a lake. That's the image. Here's the thought. Running free in northern Ontario. Lake Superior is gigantic, running along the north shore. Best scenery a person could ever expect to see. Training my sights on Terrace Bay, looking beyond to Thunder Bay. Having a good run so far this morning. Drink of water, suck on a lemon, washroom break, and back on the road. Approaching 13 miles. Weather perfect, no wind, cool. Almost as if I ordered the weather for today. Talking a bit with the guys convinced me to stop at Jackfish Lake. Well, I don't mind taking a break, but just for an hour. The weather's perfect as it is. Let's get the miles in before it changes. You never know what'll happen when you start the day. Well, at Jackfish Lake, he met young Greg, and that's dealt with elsewhere in the novel as well, in that chapter, in fact. But again, just giving you the flavor of the novel. So, approaching the end of my reading, chapter 15 is the last chapter. There are 8 sections on the run itself. I'll just read the first 3. Chapter 15, page 141. Running, running, running. Astride, 2 hops astride. Heading for Thunder Bay. A camera operator cleaning the lens of his camera. So again, he was a national figure by this time, soon to become an international figure. The thought? Lots of people lining the roadside, cheering me on. All the money goes to cancer, every penny and every dime. If people don't hear about this, it's a waste of time. People calling out as I pass them. Way to go, Terry. You can make it all the way. Camera crew waiting to film me. The one-legged runner who can't be stopped. Shortness of breath. Ferocious pain. Will the pain stay the same? Or will it get worse? Wonder if one of these days they'll be filming my very last mile. So some negative thoughts among the positive, eh? A very real story, a very human boy, hyphen man, 21, 22 years old, making this run across very real terrain. Page 142, running, running, running. Nipigon to Hercot. Can't seem to shake this cough. Always a dryness in my throat. An image, if you were driving by, a man by the roadside coughing into a handkerchief. The thought, beautiful country north of Superior. Run for cancer and get to see Canada coast to coast. Not quite raining, a cloudy day. Lots of people lining the road. The radio stations are passing the word along. A steady rhythm, the kind I love. Gentle curves of the hills and valleys. Love to come back here when all this is over. Same for every part of the road. Waterfalls, rocks, and trees, taking Canada into my eyes, my ears, and my lungs. So the novel is a bit of a hymn to Canada. Eh? It's a beautiful opportunity for me to write about Canada, and here's Terry Fox thinking about Canada as he runs across it. Page 143. Running, running, running. We met to Pearl, stopping and coughing along the roadside. No matter what I drink, it's always there. Thought the air up here would make it go away. So the feeling was that in southern Ontario he was having a cough and difficulty breathing. But southern Ontario in the summer is muggy, late summer. Maybe in northern Ontario the cough will go away, but it didn't. An image, a runner chugging, a long, cool drink of sparkling water. Okay, now the thought. Running, running, running. People lining along the road. Keep going, Terry. Don't give up. You can make it, Terry. We're all behind you. Good to hear. Good to hear. Even if I was alone, I would keep going anyway, but it's good to hear. I hear every word you say. I never respond when I'm running, but it's good to hear your voices. I hear every word you say, and it means a lot. Hurts to run with this pain in my chest. When is this pain going to go away? I'll be here when this blister is gone. That's what I always say. It's what I hope I can say about all this pain. So I'm going to stop reading the novel there. I have a few more things to say as a conclusion, but I'll leave the rest of the novel with you. But I will say that the novel doesn't end with the death of Terry Fox. He's still running. He's running in our hearts. He's running in our minds. He's running on the T-shirts. He's running in the statue. He's running in all the books and films that are made about him. And he's running in the last paragraph of this novel. But that's the last of the sections I'm going to read, and then next, a few words of conclusion. So that's all I'm going to read from the novel, except one passage as a conclusion. And that was just the run itself. All these levels of thought in the mind of Terry Fox as he's running. The most conscious, of course, is the run itself, and that's what I've concentrated on in this video. But there's much more in the novel, as there was much more in the story of Terry Fox. As a conclusion, I'll just pick out one passage which comes from the novel, and I read it in another video that I did. In the novel, there are 60 responses of people who knew about Terry Fox. Some of them worked with him in the van and so on. Others met him, shook his hand, spoke to him when maybe they were in a crowd at a rally or along the roadside. Others simply saw him go by, and others just heard about him in the media. So all these people, but 60 of them in the novel respond. And here's one that I think is kind of typical in a nice summary. It's on page 138. No name, anonymous person. I felt he was running for me, specifically for me. Oh, he was running for every other Canadian, I know that. For every other person in the world, actually. But I felt that he was running especially for me. And I didn't have cancer. That's the thing. And I didn't go out to see him. Where I live is miles from anywhere. Only a few hundred people live in my town. The joke around here is that if you run a few miles past our farm, our little spot in the road, you'll drop off the edge of the world. No, I'd seen him on TV as he ran across the country, and our local newspaper always gave him lots of space. My means are limited. I couldn't travel, so I didn't get to see him. But I've always had a sense of all the agony in the world. How so many people seem to suffer from so many things. And here was this boy from British Columbia, doing something about it, raising money to try to alleviate some of the pain. And it made me feel a little less helpless. I didn't have cancer, but he was running for me. He was doing it for all the people who live in pain. I felt he was running to carry a message from people like me. And that's just one response to Terry Fox and what he was doing to help others. The novel, I just told it up here, is Terry Fox, Somewhere the Hurting Must Stop. A couple of websites. It's available on Amazon if you'd like to buy a copy. It's also available from the publisher, rocksmillspress.com. That's all one word, rocksmillspress.com, and there's more information on that website. There's also more information on my website, which is johnpassfield.ca, johnpassfield, hard to spell my own name, .ca, johnpassfield.ca. There's more information, lots of it. In fact, there's 2 free books. As I'm planning a novel, right from the first thought, hey, maybe I could write a Terry Fox novel, right to the point where the last word is in the rough draft, I keep notes. And so that is a book. If you go to my website, johnpassfield.ca, go up top to where it says notebooks, press on that, go down to the Terry Fox icon. You'll get free, no money will change hands, a whole book on what I was thinking as I was planning and writing the novel. Also, and that summary I read at the beginning is from that journal. There's also a journal. So after I finish writing a novel, I take a month or 6 weeks to do nothing but read it over and polish the wording. As I do so, I react to passages in the novel. So everything in the journal is keyed to a chapter and a word or a phrase in the novel, and just a little note on what I'm thinking about Terry Fox, about Canada, about novel writing, about cancer, and so on, all kinds of reflections. So that's a whole book, and that's free as well. You can access it through johnpassfieldbook.ca. So those are some websites. There's also all kinds of books and videos on Terry Fox, all worthwhile, even some films, which I saw a long time ago, but I never look at fiction when I'm going to write about a topic, so I haven't looked at those films. I think there's two, maybe even three. Lastly, though, I'd just like to say thank you for watching this video.